Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Fincham's Fireside Follow-Alongs. Today we are going to be continuing on with Beyond the Horizon. And before we do that, as always, we're going to do a quick recap of what happened in the previous chapter, as well as review the questions for today. So, as most of you remember, Sarah discovered that her father and the ships of her father's men, the trades increase, left, right? So she was stuck with Pariah and her family. Now, they're extremely nice. They helped her when she was injured from the cart, and they gave her clothes. They've been feeding her, taking care of her. They've been extremely generous, But that doesn't mean she wants to stay there, right? She wants to go back with her father because that's the whole reason she snuck aboard the ship in the first place and disguised herself as to be close to her father. Where we left off, when they were when Sarah and Pariah's family were in the village, they discovered this on the horizon. Some ships, right? Now, you might be thinking, well, yeah, that's a good thing, yay, right? Sarah can see the ships and she gets to go back. But how are the village people reacting? Right? They're grabbing weapons, they're screaming. It says here, Pariah's father reached them breathing hard, his eyes wild. So they were in danger. So they are kind of freaking out because these ships are on the horizon. So they're not feeling the same way as Sarah. So that was where we left off. So we will quickly review the questions that we have for today's reading, which can be found on the newsletter under ELA Questions and Tasks. And here is the reading and writing task. At the beginning of the book, on page 6, Booth says that India is a barbarous place with barbarous people. How do events at the end of the novel change his attitude toward India? So remember, at the beginning, he says, no, this is a place of barbarians. There's barbarous people, right? Does his attitude change? It does. How do the events at the end of the novel change his attitude? What changes his mind? He was persuaded to have a different attitude. How is that so? And the text-to-self connection. If you could change the ending to Beyond the Horizon, or write a sequel to the story, what would that ending or sequel be? If you like the ending just the way it was, write a follow-up sequel. If you didn't like the ending, write a new ending, full of strong verbs and wonderful word choice. And the extension. Why does Armitage suggest to both that their men arm themselves, why does Armitage suggest to Booth that the men arm themselves? What happens as a result of Armitage's suggestion? What does Booth think will happen if his men march on the village? So, there is going to be a YouTube video attached here as well, a video of the architecture of the Mughal. So, without any further delay, we are going to get into today's reading. It's going to start off on page 56, Beyond the Horizon. So we're starting a new scene, right? Page break. Captain Booth! Lieutenant Armitage waited on the path for his captain. The men say there is a village not far, and that some villagers ran off in alarm. Shall I have the men prepare arms? We're not looking for a battle, Captain Booth grunted. As a precaution, sir? The Indians might not take kindly to us being on their land. Captain Booth consented. Very well, but only as a precaution. Armitage gave the order. The English continued their march forward from the ships, the path rising up on a small hill. At the top, the sailors slowed. Below them lay the village, little more than a cluster of feeble huts. In between them and the village gathered a gang of men wielding farming tools. The villagers cried out, rattling their weapons, warning them away. So here, Armitage is like, should they prepare arms? What that means is, should they grab weapons, right? Should we bring guns? And Captain Booth says, well, we're not looking to start a war with them, right? And then he says, well, just as a precaution, kind of like a just in case kind of thing, because we're coming onto their land, and they probably are not going to be happy about that. So if they attack us, we're going to want to defend ourselves, right? It's pretty reasonable. Page 57. Captain Booth gave the order to halt. Stand fast, men! We must let the Indians know we won't be discouraged, sir, said Armitage. We should march on. I wager they will retreat. And if they don't? Captain Booth asked. With their muskets and swords, the sailors could easily overwhelm the farmers, but that was not what Captain Booth wanted. That's their concern, not ours, said Armitage. We will have the land regardless. He drew his sword, and several of his men did the same. So this is the swords here that they're using. So now the farmers are kind of grabbing whatever's around them, right? Just farming tools. So they don't have any actual, weapons designed for battle. They're just kind of improvising. They're grabbing what they have around them and using it as best they can. All right, now we're going to go to page 58. Lower your swords, Captain Booth snarled at the sailors. He looked at the farmers, their chests heaving with alarm, their eyes darting frantically. The farmers would stand their ground, Captain Booth could tell. Captain, we must not show weakness, said Armitage. Let us not be too hasty, Armitage. We will have land, but not like this, Captain Booth ordered. Then there came a call from the crowd of villagers. A voice rose above the clamor. Stop! Captain Booth and Armitage turned as a girl forced her way through from the back of the crowd. She wore a flowing dress, a purple top, and a headscarf. The girl dropped the headscarf, uncovering blonde hair and fair skin. Silence descended upon the path. Captain Booth gulped, his hands rising to his mouth. Sarah? He whispered through his fingers. Page 59. What? Sorry, guys. What happened here? Oh, I see. I thought that was a period. I'm sorry, guys. So Captain Booth gulped, his hands rising to his mouth. Sarah? He whispered through his fingers. Hardly daring to say her name. How could it be? Sarah stepped forward. Yes, father. But you're in England, with Aunt Mary. Captain Booth's voice failed as he stared at her clothes, her face, and her short hair. I've been with you all along, closer than you know. Sarah felt tears build up in her eyes as she ran into his arms. So here they are. United. Well, they've kind of been together already, but now they're united in a way that Captain Booth knows that his daughter is here, right? So he's probably pretty happy about that. So page 60. Cook's boy? Captain Booth gasped, and Sarah nodded. But how have you ended up here? An accident at the docks. Sarah felt for the bump on her head. I was lost, but they saved me. My friends. She gestured to the villagers and said, Please don't harm them or their homes. We must have our trading post, Armitage insisted impatiently. I implore you, said Sarah. Somewhere else. Not here. Not these people. So here is Sarah kind of defending them. Like, look, I know you guys want to have your trading post, but you can't build it on their land. Because if Armitage is trying to set up this post, what if, the Indians, what if they don't want to give their land up? Just hand it over to these strangers. Well, what are they willing to do to keep their homes? What are you willing to do to keep yours if someone threatened it, right? You would probably do a lot to make sure that you had it, that no one could take it from you. So she is trying to stop a conflict right now. Page 61. First paragraph. Captain Booth thought for a moment and looked at the crowd. Priya's father and the others stood firm, and behind them near the village walls stood women and children. For the first time, Captain Booth saw families and saw that there was wood smoke coming from cooking fires, from homes. The captain nodded slowly. "My daughter is right," he said. "Our work is done for the day, Lieutenant Armitage." "Yes, sir," said Armitage, his face red. He grudgingly ordered the men back to the boats. Sarah threw her arms back around her father and squeezed tight. So it looks like Captain Booth is going to do the right thing here. It looks like he is going to decide maybe not to hurt the families or try to kick them off their land so he can build on it, right? After all, I mean, they did kind of save his daughter. Would that be a good way to repay them for that kindness? If somebody saved and helped out a person very close to you, would you show your appreciation by forcing them out of their home and forcing them off of their land so you can build on it? Probably not, right? Page 62. Here is a picture. Looks like, I think that's Priya's mother. And what is she doing here? It looks like she has a little basket of rice. And this, I'm not quite sure what this is. Looks like she pulls these strings and then this thing here rotates. I'm not quite sure what that is. A little interesting thing. I like the artwork in this book. Alright, so page 63. So, page break. A new scene, right? Sarah and her father followed Priya through the village back to her house to say their farewells. Sarah pointed out the clearing where they played gilli danda. She showed him the cakes of dung in neat rows on the walls of the huts, and told how the villagers used them to fuel fires. She described the medicine that Dottie had put up on the lump on her head, and the kindness that the family had shown her. Dottie was standing in the shade of the tree with Priya's father, a tub full of milk at her feet. With her hands she pulled a rope back and forth, spinning a wooden churn. She bade Captain Booth and Sarah to sit with her, and they watched her for a bit, listening to the twirling of the churn in Dottie's hands, the gentle sloshing of the milk. Then Priya fetched some cups. "It's very pleasant," said Sarah's father, wiping the milk from his lips as he gestured to Dottie that he liked the drink. "Da kilasi," explained Priya. "Da kilasi." Captain Booth tried, his voice stumbling over the words. Sarah and the others chuckled, and Captain Booth chuckled with them. "Very pleasant indeed," he repeated, gazing around the village. So this actually isn't rice, this is milk. And she is churning, and usually when they churn milk or dairy products, that usually makes butter. I think that's what she's making. All right, so we're going to go to page 64. Here's a picture of Sarah on the coastline, and the trades increase in the background there a little bit. First paragraph. Saying goodbye to Priya was hardest of all. The girls stood together at the village walls, hands lightly touching as Sarah's father left them and walked back over the hill to the waiting boats. Priya had been her rescuer, her companion, the girl who had given her the very clothes off her back. Sarah thanked fate for giving her a chance to repay the debt. Priya's home was safe for the time being. Sarah glanced at the ships in the distance, as if worried they would drift away with the current and she'd be left behind once more. Priya smiled and pointed at herself and then at Sarah. "Dost," she said. "Dost." Sarah understood her well enough. "Friends," she said. Sarah turned toward the path and took one last look back at her friend before running to the waiting ships, her purple headscarf trailing in the wind. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt calm. India had turned out to be a revelation in so many ways. So, after all that, remember, this all started with Sarah, simply wanting to be with her father. So, Her father leaves on the trade increase to go set up an outpost. She disguises herself and sneaks aboard under the guise of being the cook's assistant. They travel to India, this place they don't know a lot about. There's rumors that the people there are barbarous, right? She leaves the ships after they dock to chase the cat. We don't really know what became of him, did we? What happened with the cat? I'm not sure. But she's chasing the cat, Tom, and a cart hits her and knocks her unconscious, knocks her out. This family, they could have just walked past her and let somebody else deal with her, right? But no, they picked her up. They brought her to their hut. They let her rest in bed. They gave her new clothes. They fed her. They played games with her. They were kind to her, right? And how does Sarah repay them? She repays them by persuading Lieutenant Armitage and the rest of the men to not destroy their homes. Don't force them off their land. Let them live here in peace. And that was the way that she repaid Priya and her family. So after all of that, Sarah and Priya, although they didn't speak the same language, they became good friends. And now it's time to say goodbye. Sarah makes her way back to the trades increase, and then they go on their way. Did they go home? Did they go another part of India to look for a place to set up the trade post? I don't know, but she leaves Priya forever. So, with that is the end of the story. But before we sign off for the day, I will read one more time the questions that go along with today's reading. So number 1, the reading and writing task. At the beginning of the book, on page 6, Booth says that India is a barbarous place with barbarous people. How do events at the end of the novel change his attitude toward India? So at first, he thinks they're barbarians and everybody's dangerous, right? At the end of the book, how do the events change his attitude toward India? And the second one, text to self-connection. If you could change the ending to Beyond Horizon or write a sequel to the story, what would that ending or sequel be? If you like the ending just the way it was, write a follow-up. Write a follow-up sequel. If you don't like the ending, write a new ending, full of strong verbs and wonderful word choice. So you can write a sequel, or you can just write a new ending. Maybe you didn't like the ending. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think about the ending. All right. So the last one is the extension. Why does Armitage suggest to Booth that their men arm themselves? What happens as a result of Armitage's suggestion? What does Booth think will happen if his men march on the village? So those are the questions for today's reading. Thank you guys for following along with me. I hope you enjoyed the story. I certainly did. Again, post your answers and your questions. I would love to read an alternate ending to this. If you have a different ending that you would have liked to seen, write it. I want to know what you guys think. You can email it to me, post it on Seesaw. Any questions about the stories, you guys can leave in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys following along. That's it for today. Until next time, bye-bye.